Look, I guess it's organisations across Australia adapted pretty quickly and overall very impressively to remote working. Um, and that is something that we didn't really have a choice. COVID hit early in the year, and bang, we were straight into it. And what we've seen since then, when we've been engaging with our customers, is a range of, I guess, maturity levels that when we see remote working. So I just want to touch on them very briefly here. But those three maturity levels of remote working, let's just start with a baseline. So we call it remote work. Okay. Now, of course, there's a level of security that goes with that. Traditional security approaches, and but that's our fundamental baseline. We got people out there working. Then what I call secure remote work, and this is probably more focusing a little around some of the modern tools. And I'm going to go into these tiers in a little bit more depth in a moment. But these are around some of our more modern tiers of security, some things that are related a little bit more to where information is dispersed today and the threats that are coming in and the modern types of attacks. And then finally, I would say the third one there is trusted remote work. Now, trusted remote work, we're in a different scenario here where people are not with us. We can't see their actions as easily as maybe we could. And that's a different tier that we're seeing all together again. So I guess the goal had to be, in this scenario, we had to get people working. First and foremost, that was it. Many organisations might still rely on traditional aspects of security here. We're looking at things like antivirus, a good firewall, secure passwords, those traditional baseline securities. Now, traditional tools like these have been leveraged by many, and of course, Microsoft 365 Teams has been an enormous success, and they're benefiting so many organisations globally. And the availability of things like Windows Virtual Desktop probably couldn't have come at a better time. And if you haven't explored tools like Windows Virtual Desktop, it certainly assists with that remote working experience. So people got moving, and they've done remarkably well to transition. And many have stabilised in their new mode of work. Now they need to think differently about how to remote work securely. And I guess there's different risks that come into play with that. As I mentioned before, data is spread in different ways. We saw phishing as a key risk here that was brought up by many of you, and also data breach. Right. So what are you doing with your environment that is addressing these sorts of things? There's different tools that we need to consider, maybe things like multi-factor authentication, maybe things like relating to information or data loss prevention policies that protect against that accidental breach, and also maybe that intentional breach. Now, secure remote modern work, you might be in this scenario. If we think about this, as I said, IT and data assets, they have few boundaries. They traverse devices, places, users, groups, and more. And in my experience, understanding these modern security solutions that address this is critical. A colleague continually reminds me that secure identity in the cloud world is the new firewall, right? So let's just say that again. Secure identity in the cloud world is the new firewall. You guys called it out yourselves as that being one of the big risks. So how does Microsoft make modern secure remote work easy? Is the question here. And I guess modern approaches to security are critical. We've seen everything from state-based attacks, crime syndicate-driven threats, even the teen hackers that disrupt organisations continually in Australia. And what's frightening is the sheer volume of organisations that are exposed and they're not even aware. We get called into assisting clients here where credentials have been threatened or corrupted, compromised is probably the right word, and the organisation hasn't even been aware of this. 6 months later, the attack vector actually takes place and has impacts in all sorts of ways. I've seen hundreds of thousands of dollars being paid to wrong bank accounts. I've seen clients of an organisation being messaged and given directions, that has caused security concern in a business. All sorts of things happen when we lose those credentials. So certainly I would say things like multi-factor authentication again here, things like conditional access. Okay, so if you're looking at this modern secure remote work, when a user comes in from maybe their own personal device or they're not on a company controlled network, we're setting up conditions that say they only have access to certain types of information or certain applications or certain content in these areas. That conditional access is a big one. Making sure we have good, safe links, safe attachments that are being protected in email that comes in. Things like self-service password or single sign-on to our applications that reduce risk. Self-service password reset, I should have said, apologies, or single sign-on that reduces complications and encourages a better secure posture. They're all things that just make it easier to securely access our corporate content and protect our identity. Because once that's exposed, the damage is done, and generally it can often be too late. Moving on to the third tier, trusted remote work. This is a different scenario. We've got clients now where they used to have their staff operating all together, all in the one location, one room, working with managers, providing them data and guidance around their actions or what they do with their data, I should say, and guidance around their actions. Many of us now have this remote workforce where people are out of sight. It doesn't mean they're out of mind, but obviously it's a little bit harder to get visibility of actions and guide these individuals. And we're in a world where it's increasingly important around risk behaviour or risk and compliance and the behavioural actions that go with that. So how do we still protect our people and our content where they're a little bit harder to reach and see? How, as a CIO or an IT manager, how do I feel comfortable and that remote work is trusted? So we need to protect against both accidental and deliberate breach scenarios that comes into play. And again, Microsoft makes this simple. Organisations just need to take some time talking to the right people to better understand the landscape and the benefits of what's possible. So if I think of some really cool things that I don't see organisations diving into yet, and it's probably because they're not aware of what's available in some of the upper tier licensing offerings and suites or the individual opportunities, but things like the attack simulator. Microsoft have a great attack simulator that you can effectively push out, launching a dummy phishing attack into your organisation and see how users respond. Right? Nothing provides us better trust than seeing that people all respond in the right way. A practice run against those sort of threats. Additionally, if we get data that people are responding the wrong way, we can address it, we can remediate it, we can add training, and we can continually run that attack simulator until we have the right behaviours. Again, data loss prevention tools that are built into things like your Microsoft 365 environment there that prevent accidental sharing of data, that personal identifiable information or data specific to our operations that we consider confidential. Azure information protection that goes with the content even once we do share that externally, but it only is shared to those people that it's intended for. No one else can open that content. Cloud app security, giving us visibility into the tools that people are using and what they're doing. And we're going to dive into a little bit of a demonstration on that one very shortly. And you'll see, I don't want to give it all away right now, but you'll see the power of a tool like Cloud App Security. Things like Intune, I know a lot of organisations do have mobile device management, but still today we come across a lot of organisations that aren't doing that. And do you have it across a BYOD model? If people are coming in off their own personal devices, that's a big data breach risk as well. What are we doing around ensuring that data stays within our governance realm, and when that user leaves, it isn't on their personal device. There's insider risk scenarios. There's also things like information barriers where we can constrain things to certain departments in the organisation, even relating into your Microsoft Teams environments. And this goes beyond the step of, say, permission.